Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency, 504-556-0809 or davemietteINSagency.com.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We are live from our Pontchartrain production studios. Beautiful backdrop in the city of New Orleans today as we reach 90 degrees. It's March 26th. Ouch. Great show for you tonight, as always. We have only one panelist right now doing our social distancing. Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports will break all of the Saints news down for us. And as always, looking forward to hearing what Sean has to say. Sean, how are you, bud?
I'm doing great. 6 feet away
yes,
here.
Yes, we didn't. First time we've ever seen each other. Did shake hands?
Right. It's the first time I could ever recall not shaking your hand when I saw you. But following proper protocols in this new normal, this new reality, doing our best to make the best of it. But we're doing what we can do.
Fox 8 still still covering the Saints. You've been doing great breakdowns every night on film study. Plus, you got overtime coming up again this week, and then the final play on Sunday. Right?
Overtime will air tonight on Fox 8 at 10:30. Final play at 10:30. Final play at. We keep it posted multiple times a day. We understand the need for sports news at this time. We understand the need to provide content. That's why I've been working a lot to break down some film, to do my best to create original content, and not just me, everybody in my on my staff or on my team, I guess you could say. We've been all been doing the same thing. So it's an interesting time, but we're just trying to make our way through it.
Yeah. Well, we and I were talking before we went on camera tonight. Thank goodness for the NFL, because without the NFL right now, there is nothing to talk about more than just speculation. There's been a lot of talk with the GMs about the possibility of maybe moving the draft. The GMs would like to do this. Look, I understand why.
Yeah,
their jobs are on the line here in a lot of cases. Again, you don't have a chance to be able to see these prospects up close and personal, the interviews. What happens if you didn't have a pro day, if you didn't run at the combine? There are a lot of moving parts here for the general managers. The NFL, though, looks like maybe they're pushing back on that a bit. Talk a bit about what you know and what you think will happen.
Well, look, as of right now, as the time of this taping, as the time of this show, it seems like there's a group of general managers, Mickey Loomis being one of them, that want to see the draft pushed back because this is the information gathering phase. March and April are money months when it comes to the NFL in terms of team building, both with free agency, salary cap, and what is a months-long process that is the draft. And you're taking pro days out the mix. You get 30 visits to a facility. Those have not happened. You can't go out and see a prospect. I was told by one agent who represents someone that could get in the first round, there's been a lot of FaceTime calls just to kind of have some sort of dialogue, some sort of engagement. So it makes a front office's job, that much harder to formulate a board, because you feel like you haven't quite done all of your homework, and you're not going to have enough time to get all your homework done. If this is indeed the case with the new circumstances. And obviously, I get that. On the flip side, I believe, my opinion here, that the NFL is keenly aware of their place right now in society, which is they're the only thing that's even semi-normal in this bizarro world we're living in right now, especially the sports world where everything has been completely shut down. And I think they've understood that the amount of people that have gravitated to the free agency news, which was, I have no idea how close it came to not happening, but that was the right call. That was in my opinion, that was the right call. So it is my belief, and that the NFL will have the draft when it's supposed to. I think they should have it when it's supposed to, just because look, man, it's sort of become that one little ray of, okay, I don't have to hear about COVID-19 24/7. I know there are times for me when I'm scrolling through, I'll look up, I'm looking at all this stuff for an hour. I'm like, I can't do it anymore.
Right.
So I guess you could say my opinion would be, I think it's in the best interest to keep it as is, but I understand those that want to see it pushed back, because there's not like anything behind it right now. You could push it back a couple of weeks and give those teams a few more. But I'll say this, the NFL draft, there's always an element of risk. There's always going to be busts. I mean, with no interruption, there's going to be colossal busts. It happens. So while there are a lot of moving parts, and I think there's obviously going to be a lot of adjustments made to it, I think the show should go on when it comes to the NFL draft.
You know, it's interesting. I talked a little bit about on my radio show today about who this affects more. Does it affect the first-round pick that's that's borderline first, second round, a guy that maybe you didn't get a chance to work out, again, that maybe had some issues as an incredible athlete, great on the field, but maybe had some issues, within his collegiate career off the field? Does it affect the diamond in the rough that's out there that, again, that you're going to take that flyer on in maybe the 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th round, and that, the ability for that individual to either move up or down? What do you think it affects the most?
Well, they say day 2 and day 3 are your scouts' day to shine. So generally speaking, I think you're relying heavily on your scouts at that point anyway. So I don't know if it affects more the rounds 4 through 7 or rounds 3 through 7, but I think first and second round in terms of how you formulate the top of your board, a conversation with a prospect could determine that.
Yes.
I mean, when you're talking about elite prospect A, elite prospect B, medical prospect A, medical prospect B, where do I rank them? I think it actually impacts more the top part of the round, where you formulate the top of your board. Because look, in any draft, regardless of circumstances, once you get past round 2, the grades are all over the place, all over the place. You've had Mike D'Attilio on your show. He'll tell you that. Any draft guru I've ever talked to, it's just when you get, there's just so many fluid parts at that point. So to answer your question, I think it impacts more the top of the draft, because now you really just have to go on tape, and you're really not going to have the chance to have that dialogue that you normally would have.
I think it also affects those with medical issues as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, a guy like Tua, again, who's expected to be maybe a top 5 pick. I mean, if you're the Dolphins and you're sitting there and you're having a chance to pick Tua, or you may be delaying that till maybe a later pick, does he fall because they never got an opportunity, or teams never got an opportunity to really work him out to see, again, how he looks going forward?
Yeah.
Look, you talk a top 5 pick. Look, there have been a lot of busting quarterbacks with top 5 picks, but you don't want to be in that situation in this draft as well.
Yeah. So again, as an unknown, obviously he was at the, he didn't obviously participate, but he was there doing interviews, and the combine is all about the medical to begin with. So yeah, it's a dice roll. It is. That's why any talk of Tua being number 1 overall pick now has been gone, just because he's just too risky. Joe Burrow is just too safe.
Yes.
But in saying that, I still think Tua, if he's still available at 10, that's a shock. I still think he's a top 5 pick.
Let's talk a little bit about, again, how the NFL and college football will handle this going forward. LSU got 3 days of spring. I think Tulane got about 3 or 4 days of spring in. The Saints usually have their offseason workouts, OTAs, during this time, and then, of course, then go into your mini camps, etc. In the past, the Saints have had almost 100% participation in these offseason workouts. It's bonding as a team. That's a big part of what's going on with spring and these OTAs. When you're looking at the collegiate game, LSU losing so many really great players to the draft. Again, starting over, new quarterback. Again, teams that are even new free agents coming in, getting acclimated. How do you think that affects this football season going forward? And really not just football. I'm going to get into basketball in a moment, ask you the same thing, but because now it is about the personal motivation of the player to make sure they're working out, and then the logistics of, how do you? There's no gyms open. I mean, you're a guy that works out every day.
Yeah, it's been a challenge.
It's been a challenge, right?
Yeah, it's been a challenge. I would say it puts the Saints at a distinct advantage, this situation. No OTAs, if that's were to happen, no mini camp. Why? They're returning a lot. They got a lot of veterans on that roster. Same quarterback, same offensive line, same head coach. Imagine being the Carolina Panthers right now, and you welcome in Teddy Bridgewater. You got a brand new coach trying to implement a system, and you can't talk to anybody. You can't meet with anybody. That's a distinct disadvantage. So I think the more established teams with the more established quarterbacks and coaching staffs, I think, are at a distinct advantage when it comes to this because you're talking about a team that knows the system. Now you're kind of fine-tuning and tweaking and complementing what you already have, as opposed to starting all over from square one.
New playbook.
Exactly. You know, I would almost treat it similar to the 2011 season with the lockout, where there was no off-season program. I know players doing their own thing. There was no off-season program, and training camp started, I believe, early August at that point. So there's precedent for that, and generally speaking, the teams that were a little more established, they had a distinct advantage.
What about the collegiate level? Speak specifically to LSU and Tulane, both new quarterbacks. Again, you've got new coaches that have come in, even though the systems are the same as they were previously. It is a challenge because now you're talking about 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids that in a lot of cases are now back home around their friends. Are they doing nutrition-wise, weightlifting? I mean, the things that you do. And look, before you could have a bunch of players that say, let's get together. But with social distancing now, can you even do that?
Yeah, and I think that's where and that can impact a team like LSU because Miles Brennan has been in obviously this system, but he's been biding his time. But you know, it's new faces. It's he's got to develop the chemistry with those receivers now. And 3 days into spring, all of a sudden it's gone. I'm very curious what they do because that's not a level playing field because some schools started spring earlier. Some schools hadn't even started spring. LSU was just getting into it. Tulane was just getting into it. That's not a level playing field. What does the NCAA do to kind of give them some form of a spring football-like feel? Because that's a little bit unprecedented in that regard. So I'm very curious to see what happens there because in LSU's case, you got Linehan, who obviously you still have Insminger, but Linehan's case, he's new. Bo Pelini, totally different system,
defense.
Much more D-line centric, brand new linebackers. So yeah, I think that's something to really watch because not every school was on the same calendar. So that is key. So
agree.
How far along were certain teams in spring? And how much are these guys kind of taking it upon themselves to study up and being ready and keep themselves in physical shape, like you said? Because it's hard. It is hard to do when you're just on your own like that.
Of course. I mean, again, and look, when you're sheltering in place, as we are in Louisiana, you know, we don't know what other states are doing. It's different state to state. That's an issue there. The motivation, obviously, is an issue. I know coaches are probably scared to death of this right now going forward. We were discussing before the show that the Texas A&M athletic director told the Austin Statesman that there was a possibility they may go to an NFL-type situation, right?
Well, that was
with
the prior
OTAs.
discussion. Yeah, I mean, who knows how far that can go. There's going to have to be something, though, right? I mean, depending on how long this lingers, maybe not. I know because there's some even preparing for a scenario where college football or NFL doesn't even start on time. I think that's a little too presumptuous at this point, but we'll see. If that were to happen, that would be interesting just because June is peak recruiting season. Peak recruiting. It's one of the strangest calendars you'll see for a sport is the college football calendar because you're really juggling two hats. You're trying to get the guys coming in that are a year away and your own guys getting ready for a season. So I'd be very curious to see how that panned itself out because, and again, we're all in the unknown here. And some states are at a disadvantage than others. We're probably at a little bit of a disadvantage down here.
I would agree.
California, Washington, New York, as opposed to a state like, I don't know, Iowa or Oklahoma, whatever the case may be. I haven't kept up with every single state, but still, all factors that are going to come into play that are, if things go wrong in the season, that are going to come up as reasons why.
Yeah, I would agree. And look, we'll get back to football in a moment, but the NBA. David Griffin said on a podcast that he really believes that the NBA will be playing the rest of their season, the last 20 games into the playoffs, somewhere between June and July. Okay, well, how do you, first of all, everybody should be getting healthy. That's the plus. But then how do you keep yourself in shape? The other part of it, and then the continuity.
Kind of shape, because it's a aerobic game where you're constantly moving. So
How do you get yourself in NBA shape?
There's a cardiovascular element, and you can't really go to the gym right now, I guess, unless you're just by yourself or you're shooting threes with a couple of your buddies. I'll give you another factor. Early March is when the games stop. Is that correct? Okay. If games do come back and there are no fans and they play without fans indefinitely, think of all the gates, the receipts that you don't get by fans attending. I think that could matriculate itself or manifest itself into next year's salary cap when it goes up, when you talk about league revenues and it being down. So I think this is very. I think for every sport, because I think Major League Baseball will be impacted, NHL obviously, but I think for the sports that are most popular down here, I think NBA's bottom line is at most at risk right now because of. I mean, they were right into the peak. Right. I mean, we were all talking playoffs.
Yeah.
And now it's just been ice cold.
Right.
So that's a tough task ahead for them.
It is. And then I'll add something. That's something we've been talking about on the radio show. We've mentioned it on this show as well. You know, again, when you have all these sports coming back online at one time, trying to get their seasons in. Again, broadcasting, the broadcast agreements with networks, how are you fitting those in? I mean, if Major League Baseball is supposed to have a game on a Tuesday night, and all of a sudden, again, you got the NBA playoffs, when you really want to, or again, the end of the NBA season, how does that work? I mean, again, they have sister networks, but again, some people don't have those on their cable access to those on their cable tier.
All layers, right?
Right. So many.
Here's the problem: the layers. Okay, no NBA, no MLB, and then when it comes back, then I mean, there's so many kind of tentacles to this that
unknown.
Yeah,
unknown, no doubt. Let's talk a little bit about the Saints, where they are now. Just an overview, and then I want to get into specific players. How do you think they've done thus far?
I like it. I gave them an A-. Love the addition of Emmanuel Sanders, instant impact player at a position they've been needing for quite some time. I like the Malcolm Jenkins addition. Did not love the Andrus Peat contract, so I think that was their biggest mistake. They brought back David Onyemata first. One of the first signings they had when they had no space. Tells you something about how much they valued him.
Yes.
They got the Drew Brees contract at a lower rate than he took in years past. I think as we sit here today, when you add up the losses, when you add up the additions and the subtractions, I think they're at least as good, if not slightly better, than where they were when they ended the season last year. That's with the loss of A.J. Klein, Eli Apple, Von Bell, and Teddy Bridgewater. I think those losses combined with the additions, combined with hopefully a decent draft class, I think the Saints will be ready to roll in 2020.
All right, let's take Andrus Peat first, since you mentioned the contract. What I like is continuity. I like his ability to be able to swing from guard to tackle, and I think there's an upside in terms of his age, because when you start looking at linemen, in a lot of cases they hit their peak in their late 20s, early 30s. The contract, 5 years, $57 million, $33 million guaranteed, a little bit high. He was looking on the open market, for we understand he didn't get the type of contract he was looking for, but he wanted to come back to New Orleans. What are your thoughts there? What do you like about him coming back? What don't you like?
Well, just because I don't think he's the sixth best guard in the NFL doesn't mean I think he's a terrible player. I think if you add up his good and his bad, I think he's right there in the middle. I think he's a middle of the pack starting NFL guard who's had some success but has had some failures here in New Orleans. Obviously, he's got some versatility. I think he can be dominant in the run game, although I just think sometimes it takes a little while for him to find an inner dog, so to speak. I think sometimes when he's pulling around the end, he can be lethal. I just don't think he's the sixth best guard in the NFL. He's the sixth highest paid guard in the NFL. Production doesn't match the price tag. And the only issue I have is the market was ice cold for him. So did the Saints have to do this? I mean, did they really have to offer him this? Because I mean, sounded like he didn't have much else working, unless there were more behind the scenes that we don't know.
Right.
Clearly, it wasn't even close to this. $11 million, $11.5 million a season. So, I do like the fact that he comes back. You got your entire starting offensive line back, and look, you can do worse there. You can do worse at a very critical position. So if you're gonna overpay, which is what the Saints did, I always say this: overpay for what you know. Don't overpay for what you don't know. That's how teams go 7-9 3 straight seasons from 2014 to 2016. But you know what you have in Andrus Peat, the player, and though he might be a little bit overpaid, you have a clear vision. You know what he can, you know what he can't do with this coaching staff and within this offense.
I think another part of it is, Sean, how many players had the ability to swing from guard or tackle that were legitimate starters in the NFL?
And look, he saved them a few times with that ability.
Yes.
So, and the Saints value that. So I think versatility matters. I think he's got some ability. There's been some durability concerns at times. It just feels like his bad moments have been terrible. His good moments have been good, but for whatever reason, the bad moments stick out. And sometimes it's a little unfair to a player, but he's back, and the Saints are going to roll with him, so get used to him. He's going to be there.
Yeah. With that said, Larry Wolford has a $12 million cap hit this year. You got a $750,000 bonus last week. Again, it was reported by Cat Terrell that was due. What do you think happens there? I mean, again, that's a situation where you got what you're going to have almost 33 million tied up in this year in just in guards, based on whatever the base salary, whatever the cap hit is going to be for Andres Pete. I think it's supposed to be low this year.
Yeah, it's going to be low. That's how the Saints do business.
Right.
The first year or two of any new contract, the cap hits are low,
backload it,
and they'll pay it later. As we sit here today, I don't think there's anything you can really do unless you want to cut him and have a vulnerability there at the right guard position. Because I do think while he's dipping, he's a descending player. I do think he's a little bit of an upgrade over Nick Easton. But is that worth the price tag you're going to pay? I don't know. I just think if they would have done something with him, they probably would have done it by now to create the cap space necessary to go out and sign players. That did not happen. Now, in saying that, I don't think his roster spot's guaranteed. If somebody, let's say they draft a guy and all of a sudden that player outplays Larry Warford in training camp, I don't think they're married to him at that point.
Yes.
But his cap hit is high. His production does not match his price. But at this point, I just don't see, because there's not. What are you creating space for? Who's out there you're going to go get?
Right.
That's really where I stop short of what they're going to do with that.
Well, I'll take that. I'll take that path then. Again, $8 million savings if they cut him. $4 million in dead money, which can be spread over 2 seasons, which is $2 million.
If they do post-June 1st,
If they do post-June 1st, right? So $2 million over the next 2 years. You have Kamara, you have Lattimore, you have a lot of in-house guys you have to sign. Obviously, that money can be utilized to be able to sign them. I'm with you. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And then I ask the question, because again, you're as versed on this as anybody. Larry Wolford has renegotiated his deal a couple times here to give cap room. Is there a handshake agreement here that, look, I'm going to have a high cap number in my last year? Don't come to me on the last year and ask me.
You can't unless you want to extend.
Right,
That's the way it goes in the NFL salary
Sure.
cap. When you get to the last deal, this is why last year, when I was on your show, I said either extend or trade Andres Pete.
Right.
You're kind of in the same scenario with Larry
Yes, you
Warford.
are.
The exception is he's got to be, if he's not 30, he's right by 30. So he's not in a spot to really extend him. They weren't happy with his production last year. So they wrote it out with Andres Pete last year. I think they may write it out with Larry Warford this year. And you talk about the extensions, as we just mentioned a few minutes ago, I don't know that you need present 2020 cap space in those extensions more than you need 2021, 2022.
Right.
And
Yes.
he's not on contract. He's not on the books for those years. So that's why right now, I thought they would have done something earlier. So I just don't think I don't know if they adjusted at this point.
Right. Janoris Jenkins, he was a candidate for having his contract restructured. They actually restructured it, but really they extended it.
Right.
They extended it. Talk a bit about that.
Yeah, I got to see what the cap savings would be in year 2 and year 3 of that extension. It was either add voidable years or do a true extension, because the $12 million cap hit, whatever it was not going to fly. Look, they like Janoris Jenkins. Clearly they're okay with him. And Marshawn Lattimore as your 2 starting cornerbacks. I think they addressed that position in the draft. And maybe a guy lurking out there in the last few waves of free agency they bring in that can still be productive. So didn't surprise me that they adjusted his contract. A 2-year extension is interesting. But sometimes, though, you got to look at the fine print of those extensions, because you can get out of it at some point. No, originally we thought it was voidable years No, it's actually a true extension, but you can still have some cap savings if you can get out of it
that's interesting.
in future years. But I don't have the exact details of the fine print of his contract.
It was reported that, again, that he was a $10 million on base salary for next season, $1.2 million guaranteed roster bonus, $5.2 million in base, $500,000 roster bonus in 2022. Interesting for a guy, again, that is in his 30s, and really a position where I still think, and I would like to get your take on this, I think that's one of the positions that, as you mentioned, I think they need some depth on the outside.
They do. They need some depth. They got Patrick Robinson back. All of a sudden, Jenkins 32. Robinson 31, 32. Jenkins, the other Jenkins 32. All of a sudden, a very young and immature secondary. All of a sudden, a lot of veteran experience in that back end there. I think there's a theme there. I think they're telling us something there with that. So, I think, but I still think you can. That's a good position to draft, because Sean Payton has this kind of this thing with DBs when it comes to the draft. He likes them. He just does. So I could see them addressing that in the draft, and I still think there's a guy out there. P.J. Williams is still out there as a nickel, because I'm not sure who's the starting nickel right now.
Mm-hmm.
I know who's kind of in line to perhaps compete for that job, but I don't know if you got anybody penciled in yet. So P.J. Williams to me would make sense at this point.
And for the audience, who do you believe's in line for the nickel right now?
I don't know. I mean, I guess if you had Patrick Robinson and one other person, I think that was C.J. Gardner-Johnson at this point.
Exactly.
And if they see that in his future, then perhaps that's the path they're going to take.
Mm-hmm.
But they haven't expressed that to us, so we don't know.
Right, and P.J. Williams was able to swing the safety last year, which in a pinch, which obviously
Tennessee game,
which obviously helps him. Let's go to Malcolm Jenkins. 4 years, $32 million, $16.5 million guaranteed, $9.5 million signing bonus. It could reach $35 million if he hits his incentives and playing time. That was coming after a 1-year contract that was for $7 million. That was $7.6 million from the Eagles, but when they got cut in a salary cap deal. Obviously, he brings knowledge, leadership. You and I discussed it on the radio show, the bust that they had in the secondary, which may have led to this, which kind of leads to your point you just made, getting a little old. They were very young in that secondary, getting a little older and more mature in that secondary now. Talk a bit about Jenkins coming back to New Orleans, and then we'll kind of morph into some Von Bell talk as well.
So, I think my answer is they're intertwined, because when I saw the numbers for Von Bell, I said, well, this is very telling. Basically, what it tells you is the Saints believe pretty much Malcolm Jenkins is a better player than Von Bell. Despite Von Bell ascending, they do not think he's going to be the type of player Malcolm Jenkins is, at least in the present term. And Malcolm Jenkins is a guy that they believe, when he became available, ascended, a guy they had to have right away, and they were willing to basically push Von Bell to the side and bring a guy in like Malcolm Jenkins, who is much better in pass coverage. I mean, his man-to-man cover skills are still there when it comes to tight ends and running backs. A communicator, intangibles, leadership, all that stuff. And I just think it really speaks to, yet again, it is what, for the Saints in 2020 is, what player are you today? Are you who you are going to be today? Because that's what we want. We don't want a guy that in 3 or 4 years is going to be a good player. Yes. I need a guy today that's going to be a good player, because we are in win now. They've been in win now for the last 3 or 4 years. And we keep saying Drew Brees doesn't have it forever. Maybe he does. Who knows? But still, I think it's, once again, goes back to the overall. We are rolling with players that we know are going to contribute in 2020 in a very big way. And I just think Von Bell would have been a contributor, but Von Bell or Malcolm Jenkins, the organization believes today we're a better team with Malcolm Jenkins.
And they were willing to roll the dice on that, right? Because of the window they're looking to try to win now.
And then past regret played a part in this.
Right.
I mean, Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton have been very open about that. Malcolm Jenkins and Rob Ninkovich are the two that got away from Sean Payton. I mean, if you really think about guys that left, I mean, a few guys have gone on and done some things positive.
Did a good job in Carolina.
Harper, Akeem Hicks, Darren Sproles, but those are the two that really irked Payton. Those two got away because it wasn't smart, and they know it.
What do you like that Jenkins brings to the table for the Saints this upcoming season?
I think he's a better Von Bell, honestly. The only thing Von Bell is a little bit better as a blitzer, in my opinion, and a little bit better in run support, just in terms of his ability to tackle, but he's not going to ever be the leader of your secondary, whereas Malcolm Jenkins will. Malcolm Jenkins, Von Bell, whether it's zone or man, he can't cover. He's just not a great cover guy. He's improved in that area, but he's never going to be a great cover guy. Malcolm Jenkins can play the single high, although in Philadelphia last year, I'm talking at the line of scrimmage is where he played. Off the line, the linebacker depth, but a lot of times it was on the line of scrimmage. He can blitz. Very smart player, reads coverages, reads defenses, reads offenses in terms of what they want to do. And like I said before, when you put him in the slot against a tight end, he does a good job guarding tight ends one-on-one, which is something in today's NFL. It's hard to find guys that can guard athletic tight ends. And he's not perfect in that regard, but no one is in the NFL right now. I think he's one of the better ones in the NFL at doing so. So I think for all those factors, you add it all up, the Saints believe Malcolm Jenkins is here, Von Bell is here, and they're going to roll with the guy that's better.
How much of an impact do you think you'll have on a Marshawn Lattimore or Marcus Williams?
Hopefully more so on a Marcus Williams, because I think the clock's ticking on Marcus Williams.
I do too as well.
I think the organization, with having his rookie year, really wrapped their arms around him in 2018. And then last year, there were some looks, there were some death stares from Sean Payton he got on the sideline for the missed tackles.
True.
He's got to be a more consistent player, because if you're going to give up big tackles on the back end, you better make at least 8 or 9 interceptions, and he hasn't done that a season. So hopefully he just helps Marcus Williams with his awareness, and hopefully just his confidence, because there's some plays where you watch him in the open field and it's one-on-one, and we all look and we say he's not making this tackle. He's just not making this tackle.
Right.
Hopefully just some more confidence in that regard, or just the overall knowledge of the game. Just a guy that's just a pro's pro, and Malcolm Jenkins hopefully rubs off on a guy like Marcus Williams.
To your point, they just walked away from a second-round draft pick in terms of Von Bell. It would not surprise me, again, the last year of his deal, they walk away from a Marcus Williams, also a second-round pick. They're not afraid to be able to do that down the line here. He's got to show significant progress this year in order for him to stay here.
And he's got all the physical talent in the world. He's got as much range as any free safety in the
you.
league. I went back and watched the Week 1 game against Houston the other day. That interception he made changed the game, where he came from one hash to the other hash and undercut the throw. I mean, when I saw that play when it happened live, I'm like, that's the play they drafted him for right there. But they're far and few between, and in between, there are these runs where he's missing tackles, and there's a body language thing with him. There's an, oh no, I don't want to mess up factor with him, that somehow, some way, he's got to shed that and become this daring, this confident, borderline cocky safety that the Saints need back there.
Well, and again, the optimal word there is safety.
Yeah.
Again,
the
guys getting behind him, that's a problem.
Right.
Missing tackles, that's a problem. I mean, again, look, you can go back and talk about the psyche of the player after the Minnesota Miracle, but you got to grow out of that at some point.
Exactly. And in today's NFL, as a DB, you're asked to tackle more one-on-one than you ever have at any point in the NFL.
Yes.
There's a lot of edge playing. There's a lot of guys on the edge. You got to make one-on-one tackles.
Right.
So you better be a short tackler now. I don't think that's just a luxury now. I think that's a necessity now.
Well, if Malcolm Jenkins can stay healthy, I think one of the things that we'll see immediately is, and we discussed this on the radio show, the lack of bust. Because that was gut-wrenching for Saints fans last year to see guys running free in the secondary.
Yeah, and the secondary was talented, but there was just something missing. Just from a read and recognition standpoint, understanding what you see in pre-snap standpoint, and then the handsy, the defensive holding, the pass interference, which were pretty obvious calls.
Especially with Eli Apple.
And look, I don't think it was any secret that they were going to move on from Eli Apple, and sure enough, they did. So I think a guy like Malcolm Jenkins helped stabilize that. And I think for all these guys, Janoris Jenkins, Marcus Williams, I think if you're not doing your job, like, you don't have a pass anymore. Like they are here to get to the Super Bowl. It is that simple. It's been that way for a while, but there is no more growing if you're a Marshawn Lattimore or a Marcus Williams. You have to be there in 2020.
Right. And again, for the record here, Malcolm Jenkins is going to make about $8 million a year over a 4-year deal.
It's really a 2-year deal if you really look at the fine print.
Von Bell is on a 2-year deal as well, making about $6 million a year.
It was a 3-year, $18 million deal from the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, that was all I need to see. If they were willing to pay Malcolm Jenkins $8 million when they could have got Von Bell for $6 million, come on.
Tells you all you need to know.
That's all you need to know.
Sean Fazende is our guest from Fox 8 Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We'll take a quick break, reset, hear from our underwriters. We'll be right back. We'll continue the conversation. Yeah, I always seem to bury the lead here. We'll talk about that receiver that's going to be part of the Saints coming back.
BURKHARDT's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. BURKHARDT has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. BURKHARDT offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services BURKHARDT provides, visit acpromise.com. BURKHARDT's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Experiencing rough weather with a bad roof can be a nightmare. It doesn't have to be.
Suburban Roofing, because when it comes to roofing, there is a difference.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks so much for being there. I know a lot of folks are sequestered in their homes right now. This is a great respite from everything that's going on in our country right now, so I hope you're enjoying the program tonight. Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports is with us. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Let's talk about Emmanuel Sanders and break him down, what he brings to the table for this team. Look, we both know they were desperately trying to get him at the trading deadline. Mm-hmm. They just didn't have the draft capital to do it.
Yeah, I believe he ended up going, was it a third and a fourth round pick he went for at some point? So. And there was cap space issues in terms of taking on that contract that he had. It's been a while since I've gotten that excited watching someone's tape than when I watch Emmanuel Sanders, because I had this vision of him as a player, and I fast guy, gets downfield. And then I watched, I'm like, wow, he can work the short area, he can work the intermediate area, he can work the deep area. He is as quick and as fast combination. The combination of both quick and fast is as good as anybody in the NFL. I compared him to Brandon Cooks. I actually think he's a little bit more well-rounded. The way he uses his breaks on routes to create separation. We did a big film study on Fox 8 a couple nights ago.
It was really good, by the way.
And it really stood out to me. It was a simple out route on P.J. Williams. It was the game that they played back in December, where he almost comes to a standstill, gives a head fake, and runs an out route. It's 5 and out. And the separation that it created was unbelievable. He ran a post route and beat Von Bell and Marcus Williams. Yep. There was a deep comeback route. So there you go. A short, an intermediate, and a deep route. And the separation was just, wow. Should have had the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl. Ball was a little bit overthrown, which is hard to do for Emmanuel Sanders. They've needed a guy like this for a while, and you can just envision this guy coming in, getting 65 catches, 900 to 1,000 yards, 8-9 touchdowns, combined with Jared Cook, combined with Michael Thomas, combined with a healthy Alvin Kamara, combined with the Swiss Army knife of Taysom Hill, combined with the pinpoint accuracy of a Drew Brees who knows how to deliver and kind of deal to everyone. I mean, Saints fans have every reason to be excited about this addition. I think this is going to be one of the best free agent signings of the Peyton era.
I would agree. Does it preclude them from either signing another wide receiver, but more importantly, drafting a wide receiver? This is a incredibly deep draft for wide receivers.
Unless there's a project out there in free agency, I guess they could draft one that's a 1-year veteran minimum type deal. But in the draft, oh no, that's still on the board. Absolutely. What it does was it negates the have to do it.
Yes.
Which is something they never liked to. And I thought this would be the year to do it because there was Emmanuel Sanders. And there was a bunch of names that were never going to hit the market, or the guys that got traded.
Right.
But the rest of the free agent class really was not very good. But the draft class was just unbelievable.
Phenomenal.
But still, rolling the dice on a rookie a little bit. It's never something they want to do. They want to get their highest graded player. And look, it's worked. That formula has worked when you, even with the bad years and the good years, add it all up, and it's come out on the plus side. So I still think absolutely there's a chance, especially at 24, and this could happen. It's so deep at wide receiver, if all of a sudden teams start to look at other positions and good receivers start to get squeezed and start to get pushed. And at 24, you talk, wow, I got the 8th highest graded player on my board. At 24, I can snatch this guy. I don't care if he's a wide receiver or not. Same for the 3rd round, because I think it's going to be a trickle effect. To where you could get a 2nd round graded receiver, 1st round graded receiver in the 3rd round. So, I think wide receiver is still very much on the board. Because remember, 2-year deal with Emmanuel Sanders. That was the other thing why I love the deal.
Yes.
2 years, $16 million, perfect next wave signing that they do. But he's 33 years old, so you're going to need a receiver at some point.
Exactly. And what I've been saying on the radio show is, as maybe Sanders is descending or possibly moving on, if you draft a receiver, that wide receiver is ascending, getting into their 2nd year, they're ready to go.
And Sean Payton is a good enough coach, is a smart enough offensive mind to figure out a way to factor it all in and make it all work together.
That's correct. The other part of it is when you start talking about the wide receiver position, what do you think happens with Ted Ginn now?
I think his days as a Saint are done. I don't know if he signs anywhere. He's about 34, 35 years old. Maybe he hangs him up, maybe he doesn't. I know this, the guy can still run a 9 route. Now it's about, catch rate isn't always there, but he can still run a 9 route. So if you're a team in need of a guy that can stretch a defense, he's obviously a guy that can still do that. But I think he served his purpose here. I really do. I think he was mentored a young receiver core.
Deontay Harris just talked about it.
Exactly. I think there's a respect factor that I know I kind of had a vision of him as a player before he got here. Then when I met him and kind of talked to him, I felt like, okay, he's a little more of a leader than I thought. He's a little bit more of an OG, as they call it, inside that locker room. So I think you got what you needed out of him. But I think at this point in where they're at, I think probably he ends up going elsewhere.
Right. We were mentioning in the draft a few minutes ago about the first and third round picks. I think they are so in right now that I could see them once again sacrificing picks to really get back in the second round. And again, if they see a player they truly like, no matter what round it is, to go in and get that player.
Yeah, go up and get that. Trade a future pick. They've done it the last 3 or 4 drafts.
Yes.
They've done it since 2016, and the players they've gotten have been worth it. Kamara, McCoy, Davenport. I think Von Bell was one of them as well. So, I mean, they've used that formula, and they do it with cap space, they do it with draft picks. If they got to mortgage a little bit of the future to win now, they're going to do it.
Yes.
That's just what they're going to do.
Especially now, right?
Exactly.
Because they see this window here, and they know.
And I got to say this because I think this window has lasted a little bit longer than even they thought it would.
I agree.
I think in their heart of hearts, if they were being honest, they did not think Drew Brees would still be playing in 2020.
Well, I would agree with that, and I would say in their heart of hearts, they wouldn't believe that they wouldn't have had another Super Bowl championship by now as well with Brees. The one thing, again, we talked about a lot is one of the reasons why Taysom Hill is utilized as the Swiss Army knife is because maybe, again, the lack of weapons on this team in a lot of cases, they're solving that. Peyton said recently that, again, that Taysom's going to be the number 2 guy. And that it's not going to preclude him from being used as a Swiss Army knife. I wonder if he'll still be on special teams, but within the offense. What do you think the vision for him is this season?
I think he's going to be the F tight end, Swiss Army knife. His ability to that QB power that he runs and mix it, sprinkling a pass here and there, that's not going away. Now, if Brees is dealing in a game, I don't see them, all of a sudden pushing him aside and put Hill in the game. But I still think, he's going to be on the field a lot. And again, Sean Payton is a master at personnel groupings, and that's just that's the staple of his offense. That's uniquely his. No one in the NFL does the constant personnel groupings like he does. The one area I think he will cut back on, I don't see him being on every single special teams unit anymore, which is a shame because I think he's one of the how many punts has he blocked in the fake punts? So maybe in 1 or 2, but I don't think he's going to be as much running down kickoffs. But if he becomes one of you, I just think that's where you're going to have to sacrifice a little bit with him, especially if he's your future, which I believe the Saints are telling the truth with that.
Right. Veteran backup or rookie that you draft to groom? Where do they go for the third quarterback?
That's a good question. We had a discussion about this on our latest edition of our podcast. We went through some names. We were talking about Cam Newton, Jameis Winston. Cam Newton's got too big of a spotlight. Jameis Winston is another sort of reclamation project that I just don't know that if that's necessarily what they want at this point, and is he going to accept being a guaranteed backup?
A guaranteed third stringer, really.
Third stringer. So, I mean, and look, when you talk about a third string player, and you look at the availability of possible third string guys, it's not going to excite anybody.
No.
So the guy I threw out there was Trevor Siemian, that name like that. He's got a little bit of experience, can certainly would come into a quarterback room and probably just want to soak everything in and be a good teammate and that sort of thing. But if they don't go that route, I think they draft a guy. Okay. Not before day 3. I think it's a day 3 pick.
All right. The prototype quarterback we'll see backing up now because of the possibility down the line of going with a Taysom Hill as a starter, and of course changing the offense to be able to adhere to his skills Is it going to be a more mobile quarterback that again is maybe in the Taysom Hill mode, or will it be a more pro-style quarterback in a Drew Brees mode?
You talking about if they draft a guy?
No, if draft, or again if they bring in
Well, I think if it's a veteran, it's not going to matter because they're just going to kind of bring it in just kind of almost as a spot filler and be kind of a, hey, what'd you see on the sideline kind of guy. But if they do in the draft, that's interesting because if they do it as a day 3, this is someone they're not projecting to be their next franchise guy. If he becomes that way, great.
Right.
Because if they draft a guy on day 3, they're going to develop it into a backup, and that's just sort of how they're going to do things. But that's a good question because I know the name Jalen Hurts has been thrown out there a lot.
Right.
I guess it's possible because you can certainly envision him doing other things if he's not playing quarterback. So I don't know. That's a good question. It'll probably boil down to who's got the higher grade as opposed to stylistically what they want. I think it's probably who's got the higher grade.
We both agree that linebacker is a big need for this team. What type of linebacker do you think ultimately the Saints are going to be looking for? You know, look, you and I have discussed this on the radio show. When you think linebacker, you think 3 linebackers. But really the Saints really utilize 2 linebackers in most of their sets. So you're looking at Anzalone, who's often injured. Alonzo takes a pay cut. Craig Robertson, who is getting a little bit up in age. Demario Davis in the last year's deal, and that's a guy we'll talk about in a minute, I think needs to be extended. But you know, who are you looking for? Because now you're in a situation where you got a Colton Jumper and you got a few other guys that you've had in that's been camp fodder. You don't have that guy that again you could put next to Demario Davis and know he could be there for you for 16 games.
Yeah, and what's left on the linebacker
There's
market
really not
right
a lot,
now.
and that's the reason why I asked this question.
So that's a little bit of a vulnerability. I think that was part of the Kiko Alonso bring back was, okay, if we can't get the guys, because I mean, Joe Sherbert, Corey Littleton, they flew off the board pretty quickly. They were able to get Kiko Alonso back at a reasonable rate. How long can you can you count on him? Alexander Loney, the same thing.
Collins was gone quickly.
Jamie Collins, another guy that was gone. Those 3 guys were off the board pretty quickly. So, you know, I don't know that even if you sign a guy, I don't know if you feel set at this point. I think you're going to have to draft a guy at that point. So we'll see. Stylistically, I think it's a cover guy. I think it has to be a cover guy. Kiko is good against the run, and he's not terrible in coverage, but he's getting older. I like Anzalone in coverage. And Anzalone's got a shoulder that just, I don't know if it's built for NFL football anymore. So I think he's got to be a cover guy that can get sideline to sideline.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think that, again, that might be something they have to look hard in the draft at. And that might be one of, look, you said it earlier. They put themselves in to be able to have best player available when 24 comes up. So again, it could be a number of players. You know, the kid Murray from Oklahoma, Patrick Queen from LSU.
LSU, yeah.
Okay, I mean that's the prototype I think they're looking for.
Yeah. A guy that's got range, a very modern running back, played against a lot of spread offenses, although we saw a little bit of a return to the stretch bootleg concepts last year with Kirk Cousins and Jimmy Garoppolo, and even when Teddy was in with the Saints, they ran a lot of that as well. But I think more of a pass cover guy. I love Queen. I think he's the next Debo Jones. I can understand why people love Kenneth Murray, sideline to sideline guy, huge. I thought he was the only guy that played well when LSU played Oklahoma in the semifinals. So I think it's definitely a range guy, a cover guy, and I think. Are they happy at linebacker? Probably not. Is there a place where you can maybe make a trade? Maybe. Or is there a late cut coming somewhere that perhaps you can snatch up? I don't know, because I do think that's a little bit of a vulnerability.
You see, I think you hit on something there, and I've talked about it on the radio show the last few days. I remember getting Scott Vegeta late, from the Dallas Cowboys. And it would not surprise me that, again, after the draft, free agency, you see an overload on a team, and that's where the Saints go, looking to be able
Scott
to...
Shanley, right? When they got
Scott Shanley.
Scott Vegeta was the very first sign.
It was Shanley. Pardon me. It was Shanley. But I could see them doing that. I could see them going out and trying to make a trade for a veteran. You know, since again the free agent market was the cream was at the top, and then after that, really a drop off.
And that's generally the spot. That's generally the case every year when it comes to free agency. There's some middle tier guys, but generally it's top and bottom. And they weren't able to strike on any of them. I really liked Corey Littleton's range. I thought he would have been perfect. I love Joe Sherbert. 4 interceptions for a linebacker. That's not a fluke. You got to respect that. So they keep their eyes open, and that could be something that comes after the draft, even if they draft a linebacker, just because
you need a veteran.
You can't. They got a new linebackers coach as well. You can't look at that position and think, okay, I got a brand new linebackers coach, and look at it and say, that's probably my thinnest position, and not at least address that in two ways.
And you lost a guy that was a great run stopper in Von Bell. You mentioned Malcolm Jenkins, how he's been playing almost a linebacker position up front. Again, but you still need you need linebackers, and you need guys that can stay on the field. And unfortunately, the guys that you have behind Demario Davis right now either are inexperienced or can't stay on the field or are aging.
Yeah.
And that's the issue.
Yeah, and that's why A.J. Klein, the loss of A.J. Klein, I think might have been a little bit bigger than people realize.
Right.
You can survive it, but he was a better cover guy. I don't know if he's a 3-down linebacker anymore, but he's stout against the run, can blitz, smart guy, locker room guy, and still young enough at 29 where it could be effective, not on the the tail end of his career.
Yes.
And he's been tough. That guy's been a warrior with some of the injuries he's battled through. So we'll see if that comes back to bite him. But I still think, though, depth at linebacker, certainly it's important and they need it. But I still think when you add it all up, the Saints are indeed ready to roll in 2020.
Let's talk about Alvin Kamara. Again, depending on what the cap space is going to be, do you think they allow him to play the contract out based on what happened last year? Or again, they try to strike a deal with him to keep him here long term. A lot of people believe there will be a holdout here if ultimately, again, he does not get a new deal.
Man, there's so many layers to that because there's Alvin Kamara, the player, there's Alvin Kamara, the position, and then there's the position, which Todd Gurley single-handedly broke the single-handedly broke the NFL running back market because he is a telltale sign. Because when he got paid, everyone's like, yes, the running backs are back. Then all of a sudden, he had to go sign a 1-year prove-it deal in Atlanta. So if you're Alvin Kamara, you're like 24, 25 years old, and you know the shelf life, absolutely, it would be in his best interest to hold out or seek a contract at this point. It's all going to come down to numbers. If I'm the Saints, I probably wouldn't do anything longer than, say, a 4-year deal. But if you're Alvin Kamara, obviously he's going to hold out for as much as he can, or if he wants to hold out. I think there's going to be leaks of a holdout if a deal is not done.
Yes.
Because it's a tough position right now to be in if you're up for a contract extension. And his playing style, and here's the other thing. What comes first? Because I think Christian McCaffrey factors in here, although he's not necessarily up for an extension yet. He can get extended, but because I think coming off of a 1,000-yard season, if he were to sign first, the Saints would be like, okay, well, you're not going to get that because you didn't do what he did.
Yes.
But if he signs before McCaffrey, McCaffrey's going to go and want to get more. So there's a lot of different layers given his style of play. I do think a guy like him can last a little bit longer because he's not Todd Gurley. He's not a 240-pound back that's going to run downhill and get 300 carries a season. It's just not going to happen. So I think I don't know. I really don't know what's going to happen with that extension because I really can see both sides there.
Right. Well, and of course, what he does in the passing game, that's been one of the big keys for him.
And if he's healthy and dynamic,
right,
they need him. I mean, he makes he makes a difference.
If he's healthy and dynamic, has a great year, then you're starting to look at franchise tag. And then if you start looking at franchise tag, then you're paying him, again, among the top running backs. Can you really afford to do that in today's game? And I don't know. I don't think you can.
Well, if you use a franchise tag as a mode of payment, I think that's bad. If you use a franchise tag as a way to buy time, I think that's okay. I think the Cowboys are doing it right now with Dak Prescott.
Yes.
The Saints did that with Jimmy Graham, the last player they franchise tag back in, was it 2013 or 2014. I'm not sure how well that would play out in the locker room. A generally friendly locker room when it comes to players versus front office is generally not very contentious when you hear some other stories where it can be. So we'll see. Because if I'm the Saints, though, hey, man, you're coming off a season where you did not play your best ball, and we know you weren't healthy, but I need to see a little bit more of this before I commit how much money. I don't know. I think he settles in probably around $10 million this season.
Yeah.
That'd be a pretty fair contract.
I think it's a fair deal.
Especially with salary caps. No, we'll see if it happens next year. Salary caps are going up. That's been a trend the last few years. Right. So that's one to watch because I can see it going in either direction.
Right. I can see that, Sean, with the salary cap going up, but I could also see another scenario. again, with everything that's been shut down, you mentioned how it's going to affect the NBA salary cap down the line here. You got the NFL that's looking to be able to get a blockbuster deal in terms of another network TV deal, which obviously trickles down to the salary cap. What happens if you're into a situation where the economy has not rebounded and maybe the NFL's not getting what they thought they would get? Again, that's a ripple effect on all this down the line.
That's a risk you take.
Right.
All these guys take, these owners and these collective bargaining agreements. That's a risk you take. Revenues go up, you get paid more. Revenues go down, you do not. And no one would blame a network if all of a sudden they say, "Hey, man, we can't give you what we thought we were going to give you now at this point, given what just happened with this worldwide pandemic." So all factors that are in play.
And it affects the Saints too, because remember, they've been kicking the can down the road in anticipation of revenue growing year to year.
And they've been right every single time.
Yes, they have.
If it doesn't,
but this is unprecedented.
So wait and see. I don't know if we're at that level of panic yet, but wait and see. But these voidable years that you see, I generally am not a fan of that. But when you're doing it, kicking the can down the road to a pie that's going to be bigger, thus it's going to take up less than you thought. Like for instance, they took on $5 million in dead money for Bridgewater and Klein to walk away this year, and they still have the space. They need to go get stuff.
Right.
So they're not afraid to use it. That's for sure.
They signed Michael Burton, the fullback. We talked about it on the radio show earlier this week. I went and looked because, again, you say the name Burton, fullback, I don't even know who he is, right? Jumped around, was drafted by Detroit, there for 2 years, 1 year with Chicago, 1 year with Washington. The scouting report of him coming out of Rutgers was devastating blocker, great hands. Your thoughts? You went and looked at the film. What did you see?
Yeah, well, first off, he was a lead blocker for two familiar names, Adrian Peterson and Darius Geis last year with the Redskins. Very fluid. He's probably played running back at some point in his career and just transitioned to fullback. Very athletic for a fullback just in terms of his movement skills. And throw it to him a lot last year in Washington, have a catch. But you can tell there was a play where he's lead blocking for Adrian Peterson. He takes two guys out on the play. Very effective. So I think Michael Burton is going to be one of those guys who look back. There's a need for fullback because Sean Payton likes to utilize personnel groupings and heavy personnel to dictate matchups to allow themselves to get big plays. When a fullback's on the field, you see it with other teams. They match personnel. So I think Michael Burton's going to be one of those signings, not sexy, not flashy, but I think we're going to look back and say, he's a guy that contributes on special teams. He's a devastating blocker. And the Saints throw to their fullbacks.
Yeah.
Zach Klein got receptions.
Yes, he did.
And he's going to be lining up all over the field. With Washington, he was just power eye or just offset in the backfield. That's all he did. But here, they're going to use him a bunch. Can
we put the rest, the fact that Drew Brees doesn't give the hometown discount anymore?
It's done. That's over. It's really been over, honestly.
It has been.
He's the 14th highest paid quarterback in the NFL. Is he the 14th best? I think he's better than that.
Much better. Do you anticipate an extension for Demario Davis this year?
I thought that would have happened already.
Me too.
Because that's an easy way to get cap space. So if that hadn't happened yet, maybe there's who knows what's happened behind the scenes, but I thought that would have been a pretty easy one. Create some cap space, extend the guy you like. That seems to have a lot of football left.
Right.
It hadn't happened yet. We'll see.
Young tight end, got to be on the horizon here, considering the age of Cook?
I think that's going to be if they do it, it's going to be in the draft.
Me too.
I think that'd be a good spot to get one because you have Josh Hill, you have Jared Cook, you have Taysom that can do some certain things. I wouldn't be shocked if that's a spot they look in the draft.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I believe that as well. Sean, one more time, tell the folks about what you guys got going on over at Fox 8.
Yeah, we got the Final Play app. We have our Fox 8 Overtime show Thursday night at 10:30. Final Play show Sunday night at 10:30. A lot of Saints talk right now.
Yep.
And thank God for that. And of course, our daily newscast at 4, 5, 9, and 10. And I'll have a mock draft out. And when you get your Sunday morning coffee and go on the app and fox8live.com, you can find my mock draft. It'll be out on Sunday.
I was going to ask you about your award-winning blog, and looking forward to that. And always good to have you on the program.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us.
All right.
Again, thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE-TV at 10 p.m. Also on Pelican Sports Television, 9 p.m. every Friday night. You can catch me on the radio, Sports 1280, 101.1 FM HD2 on the iHeartRadio app. You can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com. All the previous episodes of this program can also be found at ericasher.com. We're posting it on our social media pages as well as the WLAE YouTube page. Again, special thanks to our underwriters, those fantastic underwriters that, again, keep this show on the air. Thank you very much. Please support those underwriters. Also, to the WLAE production staff, doing a great job in tough times. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Naila Jones, Alex Chacon, and my director, William Hill. I'm Eric Asher. Stay safe. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks to Sean Fazende for joining us on the program. Next week, Mike Detillier joins us on the program here on Inside New Orleans Sports. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. See you then.